Hey Shalom, I want to start off as always by giving all praise to Yahweh Hashem Shai. The belonging supposed to GMS and on these two brothers doing the work in truth while sincerity. This one is more just going to be informational, probably going to be just a quick one. I was touching it. And this is basically just doing some research into what the Dow Jones Industrial Average actually is. And basically, the answer is a pile of shit. I'm gonna get into also this article here, which basically says that the Dow was stupid. It's from the Investopedia Academy, and goes into actually an interview with what do you call it? This guy, director and chairman of the index committee at Standard and Poor's, who basically owned the Dow Jones indexes and stuff, who also basically said that it's a pile of shit. In no mean terms. So basically go into a little bit of the information. It says it was created by, what was this guy's name? Where is it at? Edward, basically someone Dow. I'm trying to find his name. Scanning the article real quick. I can't find it. Yeah, Charles, right there, highlighted the blue. Charles Dow and his, what you call it, his business associate, Edward Jones. Right, in fact, he basically is the second oldest, and the one older than that was another one that basically this guy Dow had created, right, which is the Dow Jones Transportation Average, and this is the Dow Jones Industrial Average. Basically, the industrial bit of the name is legacy, to be real, because it basically comes from an older time when things were would you call it more industrial than they are now, right? So it's comprised of 30 companies, right? And then we go into sort of 3M, American Express, Apple, Boeing, Caterpillar, Chevron. You see these names here, right? But the thing to know, as is mentioned in the next article, is basically you haven't got companies like Google here or whatever, what have you, some major companies, whereas you've got Microsoft, um, it's here listed, which call it the components, and it just has a nice bit of history into what the Dow Jones Industrial Average is. Now I'm not going to go into it because we'll be here for literally the whole evening, and it's but what you can get from reading this article is basically how the Dow Jones isn't actually a good indicator of how well the markets are doing. Right, in this article, the guy himself, he also says that the S&P 500 is a better indicator, just to see how things are going. But here's the key bit of information here. Right, it basically says that the Dow, in fact, I'll read this section. It says to calculate the DJIA, the Dow Jones Industrial Average, the sum of the price of all 30 stocks is divided by a divisor. The Dow divisor. The divisor is adjusted in case of stock splits, spin-offs, a similar structural change. So basically, let's say you've got a company that splits in two, because there's no money lost. Basically, what they do is they correct so that it basically there's no change in the Dow value, right? It says early on the initial divisor was composed of the original number of component companies, which made the DJI at first a simple arithmetic average. The present divisor, after many adjustment, is less than 1, meaning the index is larger than the sum of the price of the components. And it gives you the example, the DJIA equals the sum of P over the divisor. Right, and it goes down in here. So the Dow divisor was 0.145, etc. on September 1st, 2017. Basically saying, and it goes on to say, presently every $1 change in price in a particular stock within the average equates to a 6.885 point movement. Like, because I'll be honest, I was always like, well, it's dropped how many points? Why does that mean anything? But this article, because this is quite a technical article, but this article here puts it more into human terms, right? So basically says here, it says when the Dow Jones Industrial Average crossed the 20,000 mark in January 2017, the media went wild and the president celebrated with a tweet. when it ground out another 25% to hit 25,000 on January 4, 2018. Less than a year later, the cycle repeats itself. So when the index dropped 4.6% on February 5th, you would have thought the sun had enveloped the earth, right? It goes on. Where's the point? Well, it says the argument that it's time to retire the Dow starts with its size, just 30 stocks. So it's basically only looking at 30 stocks, and doesn't really make sense, considering it says somewhere here that they're now like over 7,000, 7,000 listed in the US, right? It says, and it's not even as though the Dow's components are the biggest. Apple Inc. is there short. It said it joined 2015. It says the second and fourth biggest companies, Alphabet and Amazon, so basically Google and Amazon, are nowhere to be seen. Right, but Microsoft is there, as you saw on this list here. So, it's starting to sound all, very complicated, adjusted, and all of this, that, and the other. And this is just how Esau does his business, how Esau does his everything, just makes it very confusing. So the average man doesn't, doesn't even just think about, really looking into it. Like for instance, you see contracts and stuff, they'll be all written in legalese, etc., 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 right? It goes on to say, where's the point? Right, so I'll read this paragraph, these two paragraphs here. It says, in other words, stocks with higher prices affect the index more, whatever the actual value as measured by market capitalization. Because at close on January 3rd, right, Goldman Sachs Group Inc. was a 96.2 billion company by market cap with a per share price of $253. Apple was an $894 billion company with a per share price of 172.23. Because Apple is over 9 times more valuable than Goldman, but the Dow gives Apple around 2/3 the weight it gives Goldman. Right, and once again talking about how this is actually just a shit index. Right, but then you read through the whole article, even the guys like, I don't know why people use it. You probably don't want to use it, but we don't want to get rid of it. Rather, we don't want to correct it to make it up to standard, because then we already got an index for that. And then on the other hand, they're like, well, we're just keeping it for history purposes. But this is what the media always reports on, as is mentioned in this article. Right, it says the result is that the Dow sometimes moves in the opposite direction to the S&P 500, right, which is capitalization weighted and has 505 components. This is on December the 1st, 2016, for example, the Dow gained 0.36%, while the Standard & Poor's fell 0.35%. If you had any interest in actually knowing how the market did on that day, you would look at the S&P 500 and realize that it was modestly down. That's as if you're watching or listening to a non-specialist news broadcast, you'd be liable to hear that the Dow was up 68 points, right? Once again, talking about how it's what the news reports on, right? And then also talking about how this drop that we had most recently, 1,175%, amounted to a 4.6% loss, whereas the 508-point drop on Black Monday 1987 was actually a 22.6% plunge. So this recent loss isn't even the biggest in its history, right? And just to end, this article, like I said, both of these articles, for us to go through them all, it's just, obviously you can just go through that on your own time, just hitting the main points of what this actually is, right? And then this guy here is talking about how it's really not useful. Right, it says, why the discrepancy between the Dow and the S&P? So the Goldman Apple example gives you a hint. Goldman Sachs gained 3.3% on December the 1st, 2016. Apple fell 0.9%. It says the S&P takes that information and concludes Goldman Sachs added around $3 billion in value to the market. Apple subtracted around $6 billion from it. The Dow says Goldman Sachs went up $7.34 per share. So let's say they added around 50 points, and that 50 points is worked out from, could we go back here? and he says around, right? You go back here, and it says every point equates to 6.885. Right, so 6.885, multiplied by 7, if, he's saying, let's basically, he's rounding it down to 50. That says Apple went down 1.03 per share, so it subtracted around 7 points, right? So basically saying this isn't a real, this isn't a real good index whatsoever, a mark of how the economy is doing. But once again, he sort of uses that all over the time. What it's showing you is that whenever you hear certain bits of information, the news really gotta really look and understand what it is that you're because anything that Esau's reporting, you've got a reason why he's reporting it. For instance, if there was if there was I don't know, Russia did something like, bombed a school or something, that's going to be front page news for the next week or so. But if Saudi Arabia, who's an ally, did exactly the same thing, then it will probably just get brushed under the carpet. It wouldn't be reported, right? Although what you can see when you look at the graphs is when you saw the Dow drop, the S&P 500 kind of dropped as well. Right, once again, I'm just talking about how the Dow was the one that's the main one that's spoken about. Right, so it goes on to say, this is a comment from the guy who basically runs the company that runs the Dow. Right, it says Blitzer appears to accept the issue of the Dow. He said that the committee had discussed switching to a capitalization weighted approach, but you'd just be using the S&P 500 at that point. And he added you'd be throwing away a lot of history, right? So basically, to end here, it says, to be honest, he added, this is not a hugely inexpensive. Is that what I wanted? Basically, they're saying, look, fuck it, we're going to keep it. But I'll get in the scriptures real quick, right? It says the Proverbs 11 says a false balance is abomination to the Lord, but a just weight is his delight. Right, because when you're dealing with just weights, gold and silver, cattle, you haven't got, the need to be doing all this complex, complex math, this, that, and the other. I'm not saying this is complex, but, a divisor of 0.1, there's no need for that, right? One shekel of gold is 1 shekel of, 40 shekels of silver is 40 shekels of silver. Right? This is Isaiah 10:1 says, woe unto them that decree unrighteous decrees and that right grievousness which they have prescribed. Right? When you read this article here, it talks about how that there was the implementation of the Federal Reserve that happened later on, right? Which the Federal Reserves and everything to do with it, basically removing of the gold standard. That's grievous. That's wickedness, man. Scriptures talk about how you're supposed to, you're not supposed to have a false balance. Scriptures talk about how just weights and just measures that you're supposed to use. And so the just weight is his delight, right? But all of this stuff that is all linked to this shit it just brings about confusion, which the masses of the people are confused, right? But real riches, according to scripture, Genesis 13:2 says, and Abraham was very rich, or rather Abram at this point was very rich in cattle and silver and in gold. Right? These are the real riches, right? So, like I said, it was mainly just talking on, what the Dow actually is, right? Because it's been in the news a lot lately. And it was out of vacuum when I said something, and basically it was a very ignorant statement. So I was like, let me actually go into it and see what it is, and also so hopefully you've been edified, and I'll say shalom.